Yoshis or whatever. We'll give it to whoever designs the best Naples Bitcoin and blockchain logo. But this is what we got right here for now.
So there we are.
This is the group. This is some people from the group. Some people that are on the team and linking up. Hey, I recognize this guy back here. Who's this guy back here? Who's that guy back there? We got M3. We got Bam Bam. All the boys came through. All right. We post current events. So you guys see on the left side, there's channels where we talk about things. John does like different symposiums or Bitcoin Day Naples or resources. I post resources here for learning. So if anybody wants to learn about something, right? If you want to learn about so there's all sorts of different stuff that we post here. Some good stuff.
And you can just chat with us in there too.
Yeah. So then we have a general chat. You can talk here in the general chat. People just post pictures and stuff.
We'll answer them.
Yeah. So, oh, sorry, we didn't connect with Madison, I guess, to get a picture. Is she here tonight? I haven't met her yet.
No.
Okay. Jake couldn't make it. But yeah, I mean, if you guys just have if anything going on, any questions, hop in, ask it, etc. I will never send you a direct message and ask for any money or anything. So I've literally changed my name to say Matty never DMs asking for money. So if somebody pretending to be me DMs you asking for money, it's not me, I promise. Don't say I didn't warn you. All right. Let's see here. I did pull up. Let's see if I can find this. Some stuff to talk about tonight. Oh, cool. We're live.
There we are.
Hey, look at that. Look at that. Look at that. But I actually posted this infographic that I had saved in my bookmarks because it was such good content to think about big macro generational ideas behind Bitcoin, about money. So there's actually a lot of like really cool infographics to understand things in this thread. And I figured, what the heck? Let's just pop some up. Let's talk about them. Maybe we see what's going on here. Let's see here. That's the overarching one, but we can kind of start here. So Anil said so. He's the one who created this, and I think he did a great job. It's like great educational content. So this slide is the evolution of money. Am I on the way here? Good. Perfect. So we started with primitive commodity monies, shells, cowrie shells, seeds, teeth, flint, carved antiquities, all sorts of stuff, different types of proto monies. As time progressed, we started using precious metals. Precious metals have been, for most of human history, what people have used because they hold value over time. Gold, silver are examples of those things. And then we accelerated to something called a banknote, which is essentially just a receipt tied to the gold itself. That would almost circulate as, hey, here's a receipt that you can go turn at any time to get this gold out of storage, turned into money or paper money that was still gold backed, right? It was still, hey, pay to the bearer upon demand, this amount of gold based on this note. And then as time went on, that turned into in God we trust. So that's kind of what happened there. And now we're in this period of time where we're using paper money that is not tied to any real scarce real world asset. It is just simply debt money, I guess, printed money, paper money, right? Now it transacts. We're using our phones. There were major efficiency gains to gain from money as we progressed through time. The reason we started using paper receipts is because gold had flaws. It was not divisible. If you wanted to buy a sandwich, it's very hard to break off a speck of gold to pay for your sandwich, right? So there were certain inherent characteristics to some of these monies that made them bad monies, right? And that there are better monies in certain ways, right? So some money has different strengths. Fiat money has certain strengths. It's easy to transfer. It's circulatable if you're using a bank account. It's paper. It's easy to divide. You've got 100 pennies that you can break down off of it. You can divide it. It's much easier to pay for a sandwich with 5 bills than it is with a fleck of gold, right? So there are aspects to fiat, to paper money that have benefits. The problem with paper money is that it's It can be printed, it can be misconstrued, it can be manipulated, and that's what we've seen essentially happen today, where we're at this point where we've almost exceeded, I think, 120% debt to GDP, which has historically, if you look at human history, you reach that inflection point, and it's the exception, not the rule. It's really the rule that after you exceed that point, essentially every single empire has failed that has exceeded that point within some time period after that, right? So it's usually considered like a time to be concerned. And we are approaching that time. I mean, we're pretty close to 120% debt to GDP right now. We're right at that point. There's a lot of discussion going on in the media with the big beautiful bill and all these different things, and are we going to keep spending, and what's happening, right? Like, where are we at? Primitive commodity money was used and is still used all over the world today. There are still more primitive civilizations that use commodity money. Glass. The issue with commodity money is it's much easier to enforce this level of scarcity when it's a small community of primitive peoples. But when you've got, for example, in Africa, they use glass beads for a very long time. Well, when Western civilizations started trading on the shores there, they very quickly realized they could print these glass beads in their factories. They could make a lot more of them. They could go collect these shells and essentially just take the actual real goods and value from the economies there, right? So when harder money reaches softer money, it's kind of like what you get when the West came to the shores of America, right? When people have guns versus people that have bows and arrows. I mean, the side with guns is going to dominate the side with bows and arrows. I mean, it's almost like, this idea of interaction with hard and soft money. The people who are on the soft money get exploited, and their real value from society gets extracted. We're in the beginning phases of that right now, as this idea of Bitcoin, which is the soundest money to ever exist. It's a digital money native to the internet, is created. You've got this massive kind of wealth extraction from the system that's happening, right? People that have been involved with Bitcoin, Bitcoin is the best performing asset in all of human history, right? So the people that are on a Bitcoin standard and are saving in Bitcoin over time are doing exponentially better than people that are using printed paper money that the government keeps printing. So it's just kind of an idea to think about. And we're still in the very beginning phases of all this, right? It's very early still in this transition from different monies. Does anybody have any questions about this slide? All right. Guess we'll move on to the next one. Global reserve currencies. Okay. So I'm sure a lot of people over time think that, okay, the dollar cannot fail. The dollar has been here. It's here. Well, I'm here to let you know that throughout human history, every country that has had a global reserve currency, and this is just the past 500 years, is no longer the global reserve currency, right? So right now we kind of have this, we're in this phase, we're in this era. But you need to think about it. Your whole life, you kind of experienced this one thing, but throughout history, it has not always been that way, right? So this period of time that you're observing, that you're living through, is not eternal. Is not eternal. So here you can see estimated relative standing of great empires. You can kind of see how, as each empire grows in its standing, it kind of becomes this global reserve currency. And you can watch how these empires, eventually blow that and fail, right? You've got France, you've got the UK. You can kind of see the apex of their power. And you're looking here at the USA, right? And we're looking kind of at the peak of power, and then this descent, right? This inevitable descent. Now this plays out over decades, not years. Usually, this is historically how this works, how this goes. So, does anybody have any questions about this? Who's the next? That's the question, right? Who is it? Is it going to be China, or will it be a decentralized global money native to the internet, right?
I don't think it can be China because they can manipulate that more than anybody.
They certainly can.
Do you know Mark Moss?
Yeah.
He actually has a pretty neat podcast, and the one thing he started off with is take your political views and put them aside.
Uh-huh.
And he was trying to explain how what Trump is trying to do with the tariffs is really just a tease to basically box in China to keep them from being the next world power.
Uh-huh.
And how they go about it, I mean, it's way above me, but he tries to break it down into to layman's terms to explain what their thoughts are and how they're going to go about it. It's a pretty new podcast that he put out this, I think in the past month or so, trying to explain,
Are you in the Discord group?
oh,
Get that podcast and let's post it in there so we can review it.
because they're actually
So you can
trying
link that
to
podcast
keep-
and post it.
They're trying to keep USA.
Uh-huh.
Because I think Ray Dalio did a whole study on.
Ray Dalio has his market theory and cycles and debt
Yeah.
cycles, and we're kind of at the end of all that right now. And what's going to happen? That's really the question.
Let's see if we can put that up, because it is a pretty neat explanation, and he's like, basically saying how he doesn't like when they use the analogy like, oh, you're playing checkers and I'm playing chess. Well, it takes it all the way through, and
Yeah.
It's just an explanation, but a pretty good one, I think.
Uh-huh.
So I'll see if we can put that.
Yeah, there's a lot of game theory and nation state games playing out on the grand scale, right? So
He actually likened it to, in the end result, Cold War Part 2, where China is being blocked off by itself.
Interesting.
And that seems to be the goal, to keep them from being a world power.
I mean, they are. I mean, right now it's the U.S. and China. We are the two essentially global superpowers. You can make the argument that Europe and Russia are kind of in the equation, but I would say the U.S. and China right now are the two hegemons of the world. With we're kind of a 1A and they're kind of a 1B kind of approaching very very quickly. Yes.
So I think the next one appears to be that it's going to be the stable coins. On the digital.
Yeah.
So right now, what they're doing in Congress and all that, trying to approve the stable coins. I think that's going to be the main one. Backing up on this Moss guy, because the bonds right now are the problem. And
Well, nobody wants to buy our debt. That is a problem. Yeah.
Apparently, China is the owner of our debt.
They own a decent amount of it for sure.
So if they dump it, we would be in trouble. So the stable coins, USDT, and all of those US dollar converted.
They've been slowly
are the
dumping
ones
for the
that are
past
gonna
10
be
years.
buying those bonds.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, that's
So if you can transfer that, then therefore, we would have the new dollar in the stable coin. And that could probably, avoid that yellow, that blue curve in there.
well. I mean,
Longer.
the curve is already on its way. I mean, the question is, do we need a nation state to be the global reserve currency, or should we have a apolitical, decentralized, neutral asset to sort of be this global reserve thing? I don't know what the correct answer is, but I think it's nice when people have options. So I think stablecoin legislation, all that stuff, like getting stablecoins, that is giving the third world and people all over the world who have worse currencies access to buy, essentially to have U.S. dollars, and then in turn that goes to fund and finance U.S. debt because it's buying bonds. The stablecoin issuers, USDT, Circle, Tether, and Circle, they're buying U.S. government debt, and that's where they make their profit. Because if you got billions of dollars and you just make 3% on billions of dollars, that's $300 million of revenue per year for a company of like 50 people. So there's a big business model there, right? And then in turn, people who live in Nigeria or people who live in Venezuela or countries all over the world can have a wallet on their phone with a couple clicks of a button and just have their dollars stored in their bank account, which is just a wallet on your phone, right? Like no permission. You don't have to ask anybody. Like you just do it and you use it. And then it just kind of cuts out all these intermediaries and third parties. So I think there is a tremendous value in that. And we're definitely going to see that. It looks like the Genius Act legislation was passed. So that is a next 5-year cover for the US dollar of like new buyers of that debt to issue more stables to get the US dollar on chain faster than any other currency. That is bullish for the dollar in that sense. The other question is, do we want to devalue the dollar? Because there are other implications. It's not just black and white, right? When you're the global reserve currency, it's more expensive to do business in your country. Your currency is stronger. This creates something called the Triffin's dilemma, which is a paradox. It basically says we don't produce anything anymore because it's cheaper to do everything everywhere else, which is exactly what we're seeing, right? It's part of what Trump's kind of saying here is like, hey, we can't make medicine during COVID. Like Basent came out and said, like during COVID, we couldn't get like basic medications because China stopped selling them to us. Like, should we be, there is a national security implication here. Is it actually a good thing to be the global reserve currency? Is that a good thing for America? In some ways, yes, but in other ways, it's really not. It's a systemic risk in a lot of ways, right? So these are all the questions that need to be answered. I think no matter what happens 10 to 20 years from now, Bitcoin will be the global reserve asset of the world. I don't know I think it will have a larger market cap than something like gold. I think it's going to grow much faster. It's native to the internet. It's just better and superior when it comes to characteristics of money on so many different ways, from divisibility to salability through time, to be able to transfer it across the world with a click of a button, right? All these features of Bitcoin make it a superior asset, in my opinion. So yeah, interesting conversations, but an interesting chart to visualize. Kind of want to show you guys a way to think about, history over time, over centuries, right? So the two monetary supplies of Bitcoin versus the US dollar, right? And obviously this is actually 3 years old. This is 21.7 trillion. We're up at the ceiling now. We're at about 40 trillion. So this is an old slide from maybe 3 or 4 years ago. You see just in the past couple of years how drastically the debt has grown, right? The money supply is just growing, right? So versus a money that is not controlled by a government, it's not controlled by anybody. Well, there's a reason why your purchasing power is being protected over time, why Bitcoin is going up in value, because it offers, certain guarantees to people that, hey, the government can't steal your money by printing more money, right? So it's like this protection against kind of the money printer, a way for a government to tax you more than what you even think you pay in taxes, right? You pay sales tax, you pay death tax, you pay capital gains tax, you pay income tax, you pay all these other property taxes, you pay, intangible property taxes, all these fucking taxes. Every time that money moves around society, there's this friction. It's taxed. You go to the store to pay for your doctor, boom, he's taxed. That he turns around and buys goods at the grocery store, boom, it's taxed. You pay your employees, there's fucking income tax and Social Security tax and Medicaid tax and Medicare tax. At the end of the day, the pie that was like this is now like this, and the government has all the money, and then Lindsey Graham's taking $500,000 vacations to Ukraine. So for a couple of days, right? So like, what the fuck is really going on? Like, we've got it good because of all the technology and innovation, but how much better could it actually be, right? Yes.
Does Bitcoin have any type of a lobbyist in Washington who's helping the PR?
That's a great question. That is a great question. And we are actually, for the first time, we're starting to organize in Bitcoin. And I think that was, part of my interviews that we're going to be releasing, we're talking a lot about this. Let me see if I can clone this. And it's good that you asked that, but let's see.
Jackie Price?
Oh, Jackie, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't.
There are so.
Let's see.
While he's looking,
I don't know if
there
she's.
are chambers of commerce type of organizations.
Let's see
that
here.
shape Bitcoin policy at both the state and national level. So I think he's probably looking for one.
I was looking at a picture like from that we had for the conference with Dennis, but yeah, Dennis is a good one. He's a friend of mine. He does a lot for the industry. Talks a lot about this stuff. Satoshi Action Fund. So definitely, he's worth giving a follow if you haven't. He's engaged. We did an interview, so that'll be releasing soon at the Bitcoin conference. And his goal is to ramp. So what you're saying, like, he wants to hire a bunch more people and ramp up, because this year they had to basically what he told me was like, hey, our resources were kind of constrained, so we could only we dropped the ball in Florida for the strategic Bitcoin reserve because we had to, focus our resources on Missouri and Arizona, So what he wants is to increase his team so he can have people in every state at every level, local, county, state, federal, advocating and explaining and talking about these things. So the Satoshi Action Fund is one of these organizations that does this. That Dennis Porter is the head of that. So to answer your questions, historically the answer has been no, but things are changing. Things are changing, right?
No, the question is, do we want a lobbyist for Bitcoin in Congress?
Yeah, I think if we could have no lobbyists at all, then I would agree with you. But don't hate the player, hate the game. That's what's happening here. You can't. It's like saying what'd you say?
The player can be bought. So we don't want to put.
Well, the player is. You're correct. The player is bought by everybody holding Bitcoin. So everybody that can permissionlessly own Bitcoin, that can participate in this system, there's no gate to this system. Anybody can participate. This is freedom money. So you're right. It is bought by the people who are Bitcoiners. They're advocating for us, right? That's the way to think about it.
Yeah, no,
Michael Saylor works for you now.
Like that lady that came in, she was talking about the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
The Chamber of something.
Uh-huh.
She was completely not into Bitcoin. She was, I have to be in the middle. I have to be in the middle to be politician.
The beautiful thing is people will have different approaches, and she can try her approach and try to reach across the aisle and make, different reach people at different levels, right? Bitcoin is many different things. There are other technologies in this space that matter too. Bitcoin is money is the most important issue, right? Bitcoin is like, it's Bitcoin first. That's the way I look at it. But there are other things that, that matter, right? That we're decentralized systems and you can use blockchain for. That's my opinion. That's what I think. But Bitcoin obviously is the most important issue. But I think you got to reach people all over the place. There's innovation, there's technology, there's jobs being created. And at the end of the day, I'm pro freedom, right? So if the banks are going to have lobbies that are, trying to do things, we should have lobbyists too. Now, if there's a law that says, hey, no lobbying above this level, it's your salary for this can be X or Y or whatever, and we have some control on that, I'm all for that, right? Like, hey, we don't, if we can cut down on the corruption somehow, but like, if the game is the game, you got to play the fucking game or you're going to lose. Like, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, and this is another point, is that Bitcoin's going to win no matter what. It doesn't need lobbyists. It can benefit, but why not make it win harder, faster, better? That's my thought. So you can.
But we're gonna end up giving the custody to banks. That's gonna be.
So there's.
I don't know about giving it to banks. You have
Banks are gonna take it.
what you have your built-in advocates for it. Trump brought in guys from top hedge funds or top funds. They bought 5% of Tether. They're in on MicroStrategy. So that's Trump. There's your advocate right there.
Yeah.
He's now involved because what is MicroStrategy? How many Bitcoins did they run? 500, whatever.
500,000.
Tether owns 80. So your advocates are sort of built into the system right now.
Yeah.
Trump's bringing them in.
Yeah. No doubt.
So you don't know of any strong lobbyists that are really doing well investment-wise with Bitcoin?
I mean, if you own Bitcoin, you're doing better than anybody in human history because it's been the best performing asset in all of human history.
Right.
So yeah, I guess if you own Bitcoin and you're lobbying for Bitcoin, yeah, you're going to do well.
I'm talking about actual lobbyists that are lobbyists for other, businesses, but they have invested themselves. And, they could be good PR people, good
Yeah.
advocates.
What's the guy, Brad Hogan, or is it Bitwise or
Matt Hogan.
Matt Hogan? He's not a lobbyist, but he's been going to Wall Street.
Yeah.
Wealth managers for years.
A lot of it is education.
And
Right?
he comes out, he'll go on podcasts and explain that, he's saying the adoption's coming. So he's not really lobbyists, they're advocates.
If you were to Google Bitcoin right now, is it a positive thing? Because again, I got investors that are telling me it's a Ponzi scheme. And there's a lot of that out there.
Yeah.
You guys know this.
That's right.
So how do you overcome that so that it could grow even?
I think the key is education, right? And also understanding where we're at, like in technology and where we're at in the adoption cycle and disruptive technology, right? If everybody was telling you that, this is the greatest thing ever and there was no detractors, the opportunity would be gone in a lot of ways for people because people are still. We're very, very early in adoption rates and capital that's involved. Yeah.
I don't think most people understand your first slide.
Yeah, I mean,
Nobody has a clue.
this right here is a Ponzi scheme, right?
They don't know how these bonds are sold.
Yeah.
They don't know what fiat means. Most people literally, they have no clue, but they don't know there's a problem.
They don't even understand. I mean, again, you have
What
to.
they do notice is at the grocery store, right?
That's all they know.
Yeah.
But they can't,
And
the
the gas
dollar
station.
goes, they can barely afford groceries, right?
The-
They have no clue.
The series I'm recording with Larry Lepard right now that we just finished that we're releasing, highly, you can send them that series. It's a great series. We really go down the rabbit hole on a lot of these issues. But, to understand these things, you really do have to do your due diligence. You have to do your research. You have to understand. That's why whenever I come here to talk, I like to do education. I like to say, hey, what is money? Let's look at human history. Let's look at different types of monies. What happened here? How did this happen? Right? How did we go from, hey, this can be received for, an ounce of gold to, this can be received for 1 ounce of gold to in God we trust. You know what I mean? And then now everything's mobile. Let's look at human history. Let's be the judge. Let's look at, what fiat currencies have existed throughout time. How have those fiat currencies, where they're not attached to a real commodity or actual good, how have those performed throughout human history? Let me give you a hint. They've all failed spectacularly, except for maybe the British pound, which is the oldest living fiat currency right now, but it has been devalued by 99.9%. So You know,
But,
one.
I think you should talk a little bit about the difference between the last one, which is Bitcoin, and the previous, all the other ones. What is the main difference? Is that all the other ones belong to the king, and he decided, for the government. And the Bitcoin, the last one, is not decided by anyone. That's why the word decentralized exists, because the governance, it doesn't have a king or a president or a prime minister. That's the main difference.
So you're actually bragging about the fact that the success of Bitcoin has been based on being basically a rudderless ship.
When you say a rudderless ship,
Rudderless.
like there's no captain. That's what you're saying? Yes, the mathematics and basically that is kind of the point. The idea is, hey, the mathematics, the game theory, and the cryptography of the code speak for itself. This is a system that is going to operate decentralized. Nobody's going to control it. It's essentially mimicking what gold sort of did in nature, but then it's putting it on the internet and saying, there's all these, this is engineered to be the best money that humanity's ever created. And there's no captain. There's nobody that can come in and say, hey, we're making a change. We're doing this. We're making more Bitcoin, right? The whole point of it is that it's this idea of decentralization. You know, if you go throughout human history and you look at, you know, you read certain books like The Sovereign Individual, one of my favorite books, you know, we go from this decentralized hunter-gatherer society to farming, you know, we go to kind of feudal states and warring states to the Roman Empire. We go from the Roman Empire, you know, to serfs. Then we come back together in the nation state era where we have nation states and all this centralized power and control. You know, we're due for a return to a more decentralized system in a lot of ways. The death destruction of this century, the massive power of nation states, I think has reached its peak in a lot of ways, right? If you can remember 12 words in your brain and take $1 billion worth of wealth anywhere you want in the world with nobody knowing, that takes power away from those systems in ways that, you know, it's hard for people, a lot of people who grew up in this system their whole life, it's hard to break through from that mentality. But people like myself who grew up and said, you know, I grew up and look at this shit, what the fuck did you guys create, right? Like, I'm not bought into all this. Like, what is happening? Why can't millennials, like, I'm lucky to have a home, right? Like, I've got tons of friends who, this is the first generation where we can't, like, what's happening? Why can't they afford a home? Why are we the first generation that's worse off? And when you really do your due diligence, you go down that rabbit hole, it all comes back to the money, right? The money is corrupted. Housing has essentially gained a monetary premium because people have realized, whether it's subconsciously or consciously, that they can't just leave dollars in their bank account because they're going to get stolen from, they're going to get debased. When there's no hard commodity like what Nixon did in 1971, when there's no, you know, real world commodity that's kind of underlying and backing this thing, it's very easy to press a couple buttons on a computer and print up 50, add a couple zeros to the money supply, and boom, we're off to the races with COVID. What happened to all that money? What did all that money buy? Where did it all go? Who benefited from it? Did it go to they printed $20,000 per person. They gave everybody a $1,200 check. What happened to the other $19,000 they printed per head? Where did all that go? Babies, children, everything. Where did that go? Why is the cost of everything 50% higher now? Why are housing prices through the roof? Guess what institutions have access to borrow that cheap capital before it makes its way to society, to the bottom rungs of society? Wages are the last thing to go up in a society. When you print a bunch of money, it creates massive 50-year levels of inflation. All the talking heads on TV are telling you inflation is transitory, all this, that, and the other, right? They were all full of shit. If you study Austrian economics, we were all laughing. We're like, of course, fucking the goods in society are going to be repriced. And of course, that's going to disproportionately affect the poor, right? So if you look at the chart, if you look at like, you know, low income, middle income, and high income, you kind of see this natural progression up until about 1971, where everybody's kind of going up together. You know, there's really not this divergence. And then in 1971, you just see this massive just thing, right? Where like the low income and the middle income people really struggled. And there's this massive wealth inequality now. Well, why is that? Because assets are inflating and assets have value because they're real world. You can't print them. So rich people own assets. Asset prices are going up. Housing is a prime example of this, right? So that's kind of the answer, that you're on a melting ice cube. You're not really seeing it because it's playing out over decades, but it has all these perverse downstream effects in society and in the economy. And Trump has, to his credit, spoke to this in a lot of different ways, right? You know, because people can feel that, right? You can feel all these people overdosing on drugs and losing jobs, and drastically growing separation of the haves and the have-nots, and a lot of that's baked into the money itself, right? So that's my conclusion after, spending years and years of my life looking at this.
The last funny thing that happened is in California, I think they're proposing a bill to, if you own Bitcoin for 3 years and you don't use it, they're gonna take it. I mean, it's just too laugh.
That's what they're doing in California. Yeah, they're saying, yeah, we talked about that today.
It's too laugh, because if you own your keys in your wallet.
So here's a good intro. Paul does good intros on these.
Hold on, real quick, just to that point. So Arizona was the first one to draft that legislation. So, and California is following. Essentially, what they're saying, what they're proposing is that if your Coinbase accounts or your crypto exchange account is inactive for 3 years or more, the government can seize your crypto. Right? They'll just essentially, they can now somehow, because it's a centralized exchange, have that money forwarded toward their funds. So in order to prevent that, you have to do what Bitcoin is all about, and that's control your own keys, right? Have your own crypto wallet that is off of the exchange, and then you can have it there for eternity, and nobody can touch it except for you, except if you share those keys. So this is I think they're doing us a great service, right, by reminding everybody to be self-custody.
Right, so when the banks have custody of your Bitcoin, they can do that.
Correct. Yeah.
They can do that
Yeah.
with your ETFs.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say, why do I want the bank?
There are
custody?
This is an uncomfortable conversation for people, but there are different types of custody, and I think you should participate in all of them because each type of custody has its own risk, right? So yes, you should, not your keys, not your coins. You should control a large portion of your funds and have true custodial ownership. And that's the power of this technology, is being able to have your user, like your password essentially, and take that anywhere with you, anywhere in the world, and have true self-custody of your assets, right? That's this public private key cryptography. It's like an email address. You have a username and a password. It's the same concept, but with a bunch of numbers and letters. Same exact thing. But except the only difference is that password is your key to the kingdom. It's your key to spend your money. Right? So you have to keep it safe at all costs, right? But there's risks associated with that. If you don't have a backup somewhere of that, if you don't have it written down, whatever, you don't have it secretly hidden away and you forget it or you lose it, there's no getting it back. It's like burying gold in a desert, but on the internet and like forgetting where you buried your gold. It's the same. It's a true bearer asset on the internet, right? So that is the equivalent there. Now, at the same time, if you've got a bunch of gold, you probably don't want to put it all in your safe. You might leave some, at a bank vault. You might put some in you go to a bank and you have one of those security vaults. You might put some in there. You might, buy some gold ETF for some price exposure. You might, in the same way you do that with Bitcoin, right? Like I own MicroStrategy stock. I own ETF. I own my own keys. They all have their own risks associated. What happens if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, right? What happens if I get hit by a bus? Well, my keys are in my brain. Good luck. I mean, like that's gone, but my family has access to X, Y, and Z, right? If I didn't do a good job of, writing down my stuff and having a plan of action in place, just like if I buried gold in a desert and I didn't tell anybody where it was, that gold is pretty much gone, right? Same thing with Bitcoin. So each type of custody has its own risks. And once it reaches a certain point, you should start thinking about those, and you should spread out custody. You should have some with a bank. You should have some on an exchange. You should have some as in a stock. But we're talking about when you really have real capital there that you really need to think about, how am I going to spread that around? But not your keys, not your coins. That is very important.
For me, Bitcoin is a store of value.
Uh-huh.
Payments, I don't want to do with my Bitcoin payments. That's why stablecoins.
I feel the same way as you, honestly. I mean, at this point in time specifically, Bitcoin is, and some people, there's a lot of Bitcoiners that agree and disagree on this topic. Bitcoin is like digital gold in a lot of ways. Fundamentally, that's what it is. It's like a savings account. Yeah. Now, can you use it? Can you use it for payment? Absolutely. Look what we did at Steak and Shake last week or 2 weeks ago when we all went there and we bought our, we used the Lightning Network, a layer 2, and we just boom, 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 and we bought a bunch of, burgers with Bitcoin. That was awesome. That was cool. It's nice to have that optionality to be able to do that if I want. I like optionality.
Where's IRS in this? I mean, how do you disclose, like you get a 1099 for certain things? How are you disclosing all your
So if you do it on an exchange, they will if you buy on an exchange, then you sell on the exchange, then they will track your profit and loss, and they will say, hey, they'll send you that form that you're talking about. But that being said, like, if you're operating peer to peer and you're, it's up to you. You self-report just like anything else. Just like if you go on eBay and sell an item, or you go down to have a garage sale, or
So there's a lot of people that are making money that are not disclosing it to IRS.
Well, there's people like me that are sitting on this asset, and what I consider making money is I have more Bitcoin. That's how I consider making money. So then I can borrow government funny money where they print it, and I can borrow against my Bitcoin, and I can just live off of that because Bitcoin has essentially gone up 62% a year on average for every single year since its inception. What's up?
You don't pay tax on them.
Correct. Yeah. If you borrow against an asset,
The exchanges, you get a statement from the IRS from the exchange, like River or Coinbase. If you sell.
Correct. Yeah, they'll send you. They're required to do that. They're a trusted third party, and they have to do their obligations to the IRS and to the government, whatever it is, and they will generate that report for you and send it out so you know exactly what your gain or loss is. If you're a trader, you have to interact with that.
The problem today also is that people understand Bitcoin as a stock for us. It's not a stock, it doesn't own anything. It's in itself, it has its intrinsic value, like you buy a barrel of oil. It's a commodity.
It's a commodity in
So that's the value of it. When you sell it and you make a profit, well, then you have to back to the IRS. I made this profit, and you can pay your taxes according to whatever.
But
Paul, what
if it's going up in value,
Uh-huh.
the barrels at one point were going up, they're
Yeah,
coming down now.
yeah.
You had to pay tax at the end of the year.
If you sold it, yeah.
So if you can generate a lot of income, as long as you don't liquidate, IRS is not.
It's a capital gain.
Well, it's not any.
No, he's talking about borrowing against the asset itself. If I buy Bitcoin at $100 and I sell it for $100,000, that's a $99,990 gain. Okay. So I would have to, now I held it for 5 years or 10 years or whatever. I got to pay, long-term capital gains rate. Now that same Bitcoin that I acquired for $100, $200, if I do a 30% LTV loan against it, I can borrow 30 grand and just in fiat money, not have to liquidate it, not have any taxable income, and just my Bitcoin 3 years from now will be worth $1 million.
But if you don't borrow against it, does IRS still want to be your partner?
If you sell it and don't report your gains, yeah,
If you've got something here and it's now here, IRS doesn't come after that difference in tax you want.
No.
not unless you sell it. It is considered either a commodity or property. The IRS treats it as property, I believe. I think that's like property, I believe. That's, yeah. What's up? Of course. Yeah.
Then your fiat currency's interest would be deductible.
Yeah.
Right.
So they're paying you to own it.
But
Yeah.
there is a shift happening, and Dominic Frisbee, you guys talked about that. The fastest growing industry and sector of workforce is the digital nomad, workplace, and that's going to redefine how nations are able to tax, right? Because they're not going to be necessarily in one place at all times, and who do they pay taxes to, right? They're working remotely, traveling the world essentially.
Let's say you're a citizen of Portugal and you're going to work in Brazil, but most of the time you're hanging out in Thailand, and then you've got your customers paying you from New Mexico. And you kind of get what I'm at. But I mean, that's what you're talking about. You're talking about throughout time.
Right. But where does this lead? Essentially what it's going to do is going to redefine our relationship with governments and taxes, where if they want us to pay taxes, they better incentivize us, right? It's going to be that customer relationship, business, establishment customer relationship. Whereas right now we're being.
It's an exploitative relationship as opposed to, hey,
Correct.
a government is providing a service, and we, like locally, you see a lot more responsibility in a lot of times locally than you do at the federal level, right? Like that's just a fact because people can see what they're paying for. They can see, okay, this is a park that's happening here. I'm not paying for Lindsey Graham's $500,000, 3-day trip to Ukraine. I'm not, you just get an idea of that, right? Yes.
Couldn't a comparison of Bitcoin for like real estate be like if you bought a property at like $1,000, but now it's worth like $10,000, wouldn't like be the same as if you bought Bitcoin at $1,000?
Yeah, I mean, real estate has become it has a monetary premium now. Okay, what that means is that people are buying real estate because They don't want to lose purchasing power over time because real estate is a thing you can't print. The government can't print real estate. Now, real estate is going to, I believe, Bitcoin is going to steal monetary premium away from real estate as we go forward. People can't afford homes right now. The average person my age cannot afford a home in any, they're like, it's not even within reach. It's not even possible, right? Like that's a growing sector of society because real estate has become this, it's become this asset that people buy because it always goes up because they know they can't print more of it. Now, if you look at human history, okay, and this is what Dominic Frisby and I spoke about on our podcast series, Daylight Robbery, through the past 1,000 years, essentially, before 1971, real estate increased at like a 0.2% every year. It went up, but much more slowly on average over time. And then since 1971, real estate's gone up like 7% a year on average. So, people need places to live. This is not sustainable. Why is this happening? Why all of a sudden after 1971 did all this extra capital flow into real estate and buck 1,000 years of history? Why did that happen? Well, because the government's printing money and people don't want to sit on dollars. They are put it into a productive asset. Well, what's one of the oldest assets and games in town that has all of the tax legislation and laws, engineered and written to benefit them? It's real estate. So, of course, show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome, right? So, yes.
I think you can create real estate. Like you can knock down these trees and build 100 homes over here.
Uh-huh.
But like we said with Bitcoin, you can't create it with Bitcoin. It's all in code. It's scarce. You don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah. But there is a real, so Bitcoin operates in this.
You can develop.
Bitcoin is, it's a very similar concept. There's proof of work. Somebody builds a house. There's real work that went into that. Like there's real, that was proof of work. You don't just snap a button and a house appears. Like they press a button and money appears in a centralized database, right? Bitcoin mining is very similar. When the consensus, the way that Bitcoin stays decentralized is all this energy usage all around the world continues to grow to support the system, right? The game theory, the mathematics, the incentives are all built around this system. And that is the brilliance of Bitcoin is like, hey, it's this decentralized system that just kind of operates the same way that gold operates in nature. Like, nobody can just press a button and make more gold. You have to actually physically go extract it. It's expensive. Historically, it's been one of the hardest metals to drastically increase the supply of. There are many parallels there that Satoshi thought about and thought through very carefully when he designed this system.
One of the things with real estate, although it's scarce in nature, right? You can't make more land, more earth. There is that chance that it can be, that you can be driven off of your land, right? That war could erupt, that you have to leave your land and all your physical belongings. Bitcoin is unique in the sense, how there was that race for nuclear power, so that for essentially that atomic race to have mutually assured destruction, right? Peace through strength, right? That's worked thus far, right? But if that fails, then that's going to be catastrophic, right? Bitcoin, in a sense, offers that same idea, but it just removes the incentive for violence because you can't forcefully take it, right? It's not tangible, right? You have to have some sort of an agreement with one another in order to transact. So in that sense, I think it's going to redefine our relationships with one another, with government, citizen to government. And because it is truly scarce and it is not in control of any government that can issue more, we're going to start seeing, like he said, even real estate is we're going to start seeing Bitcoin essentially cannibalize all these different asset classes. Because it's a worldwide interactive, pool of what is money, right? It gets down to the root of it is, energy. It's supposed to flow, but where we're at today is, we have a currency that just keeps being inflated, and now there's interesting solutions being offered, such as these municipal bonds for teachers, right? Bitcoin bonds are being discussed in New York. What does that do? Right? If we have teachers' pension plans or whatnot pegged to Bitcoin, they can start being paid better salaries, right? They can retire early, right? Because as Matt said, every 4 years, right, we see it outperform itself, historically speaking. So there's going to be a new opportunity here that we better act on quickly.
This is a fantastic book. Was written in the 90s. And these guys largely predicted the creation of Bitcoin. And took really interesting. I mean, they really like made some incredible predictions for the future that when you look back and think, dang, these guys wrote this in the 90s and released this book, and like what actually came to pass 20, 30 years later. Pretty incredible. Pretty incredible.
Who's that?
So this is a must read. I'm going to post it in the chat. It's called The Sovereign Individual: Mastering the Transition to the Information Age. And it's one of my favorite books of all time. And I will post it here in our resources tab. So that way it'll live here and people can look at it and see it. Oh, John, you posted it. I guess I'm on your account. Oh, man. Let's see.
So what happens when you work hard and earn money, you're literally giving away your life energy.
Yeah.
You know, you only have one life, you only live so many years. And this is what's so tragic about what happened in COVID. People who had saved for 30 or 40 years and they had a certain savings that they put away and they thought, this will fund my retirement, this will help me in my old age, suddenly had that savings devalued by 40% in 2 years by the government, basically. And that's just criminal. It's theft of their life, literally, of their time and earnings. And there's no other way to say it other than it's criminal. Part of what I tried to do with the book was to give everybody the history of the sound money camp. And it's been around for a long time. I mean, Andrew Jackson was part of it. George Washington was part of it. Garfield was part of it. I mean, I've got quotes, throughout the years of many, many people who understood this was the fundamental problem. Lindbergh was part of it. He railed against the establishment of the Federal Reserve. This is Lindbergh's father, not the aviator. There have been many people fighting for this thing, understanding that sound money is a moral issue, that the government stealing from its people is wrong and it allows them to create wars, and it's just a bad thing. When the founders all got together and worked on the Constitution in Philadelphia, they were very much aware of the risks of fiat currency, printing paper, and saying this is money. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution literally says only gold and silver, shall be deemed to be money.
Counterfeiting money was punishable by death. If they ever executed anyone?
I don't think they did.
They never did. Okay.
Based on what I've read, I mean, I could be wrong on that historically, but it was a serious crime, right? I mean,
Now it's just part of monetary policy.
well, that's exactly right. Cheater Griffin wrote a really funny thing in Richard Jekyll Island. He said, in that particular case, the Senate, the Congress, the Treasury Department, and the President would all be subject to the death penalty, and the Federal Reserve would all be subject to the death penalty today because they all counterfeit money.
So just an idea of some of the conversations that we're having, and that's 1 minute clip from yes.
No, it's a great book. I read the book before
Yeah.
it came on Audible. Now it's on Audible, and I recommended a couple of book clubs to listen to that book. But, question: when you trade on exchange, you get a 1099, right?
Correct.
Now, how about if you trade on your self-custody wallet?
Nobody's going to give you a 1099 because there's nobody to give you a 10. There's not another entity involved to give you a 1099.
That's what I've been doing. Just trading in my self-custody wallet. Every file and trade between the coins.
What are you doing? Where are you doing
You're
this?
trading with your ledger, right? Or
Every file.
I don't know anything about.
Exchange connected to that.
If there's an exchange,
Exchange.
if there's a company or an exchange where you had to KYC AML, where they took your information, they're going to report on those transactions. I have to look and see what you're doing. I don't know what you're doing, but you can. There's a lot of.
You're trading within the app of a cold wallet. There's an exchange involved in that. The cold wallet is just making it convenient for you to trade within their app.
It depends because there are if you're using Ethereum, if you're on Ethereum now, there are what we call decentralized exchanges, which are just code that run. There's no company running them really. It's just code that are connecting buyers and sellers now. So technology is advancing. The pace of things are advancing, and the future is going to be filled with stuff like that. So we're removing middlemen that just don't even need to exist anymore. Yes.
Would you describe what Bitcoin will be like when all 21 million or so?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we've got, if we look here, you can see that as we approach the year 2140, all of the supply by 2140 will be mined. The inflation will be mined. So you'll know the max total supply, which I'll argue is one of the biggest innovations that we could possibly see in human history. A true absolute scarcity. There is not another thing in the universe that is absolutely scarce. Not another money. Even gold, they're finding now that in the Hadron Collider, they can bang lead atoms together going at the speed of light, and it turns into gold. It simulates what happens in a star, right? That will happen in the future for sure. We will be mining asteroids in space to extract more gold. So, gold's just the best money that nature had so far throughout human history, right? It was better than shells. It was better than teeth. It was better than stones. It was better than, all this other stuff that's existed. It was just the best. It was better than silver. It was better than copper. There's a reason, because it was harder to make more of that money. That's why gold was always better than silver or better than copper. It wasn't by accident or chance or by selection. It was because gold historically has been harder to get out of the earth than those other assets. So if there's a demand for gold, you can still only roughly get 2% more of that supply out of the ground per year. Now with copper and some of these other things, if there's a demand for copper, it's a lot easier to mine a lot more copper. So that's why gold became really the hardest money in nature. Yes?
On the diagram, why does it say in the Bitcoin money supply of 2009 to 2001?
So Bitcoin was released in 2009. And since 2009, since Bitcoin's creation, it's been the best performing asset in all of human history. It's talking about the money supply, the actual coins itself. So over this 131 year period, the 21 million coins will be slowly released, much quicker at first and then slower over time, released to everybody in the world. Okay?
Is that like his prediction?
That's not a prediction. That's the whole point. It's It's not like we have to guess and think what of 10 people that are setting a communist board called the Federal Reserve is sitting and deciding what the price of money is going to be. We don't have to read the tea leaves and predict what they might think or who's on the board or did Jerome Powell get hit by his wife this week? We don't know. Did Trump beat him up in the office? We have no idea. Are they going to lower interest rates and try to, what is the communist board? What's the consensus of the communist board for the price of money in society? We don't have to worry about that, because guess what? We know exactly how Bitcoin supply is going to be released. It's knowable to everybody. There's no insider advantage to one party to know how the money, if you didn't understand about money and you were a poor person, when the government printed, $5 trillion, $10 trillion during COVID, you would have been screwed, right? But now you don't have to even worry about that. You don't have to know about money. You don't have to know what was going to happen, right? If you knew what was going to happen, if you studied Austrian economics and you saw what the government was doing and you knew, oh my God, I'm going to take this $1,200 and put it into Bitcoin, you would have $40,000 today from putting that money when they printed the money. You would have been able to benefit from that, right? But most people don't know about money. Most people don't know all this stuff, right? They don't teach this to you in school. I can damn guarantee you that, right? So, but with Bitcoin, it's transparency. It's hey.
Those images, the formula, the halving formula?
I'm not sure.
Is it still going to have a halving every 4 years?
Correct. There's a halving every 4 years, right?
4 years, we're only on the fourth one.
Every 10 minutes right now, there's 3.125 Bitcoin created. 3 more years from now, it will go down to 1.75 Bitcoin created every 10 minutes. And then it'll go down to 0.9. So throughout the rest of Bitcoin's history exactly how many coins, exactly what the inflation rate is going to be, per block. Yeah, we don't.
There's no inflation. Production.
Well, it is inflation. You're creating you're creating the supply of the coin you're releasing in the market, right? So the circulating supply is being inflated up to the max total supply of 21 million. Yes, but that there's only going to ever be 21 million. That everybody can benefit from that information and know that with certainty. Yes.
What about 19 million? Is that how many are in circulation now?
I believe 19 million have been circulated. 18 to 19 million, I think, and then yeah.
Is everybody here keeping up? It's okay if not. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, if you have questions about anything I'm saying or you're unsure, feel free to chime in. This is what I'm here for.
The thing that still has always confused me. Is the one time we had the whole little chart, all the little blocks were coming down. I still have never understood that.
Does it?
The relationship between that and Bitcoin and what I'm buying on Coinbase.
Okay, so what you're watching here is the network in real time. You're watching transactions occur, and you're watching a new block
right now
occur. So right now in real time, you can.
That what's getting when you talk about mining.
Yes.
Okay. We
the miners are saying, hey, this is the new block on the chain. Here's the mathematical cryptographical proof that we've solved the next block to get the 3.125 Bitcoin reward plus the transaction fees that are associated with this block. We've solved that mathematical problem. We're publishing it to the world cryptographically, and the rest of the world is saying, the math checks out, we're moving on to the next block, and all the miners start working on the next block. Right? Does that make sense?
Thousands of them. So yeah, everybody who's facilitating the Bitcoin protocol, which you can at home on your computer, right? You can download back then when it first started, you could do it on a cell phone, right? But now because there's industries behind this, they're doing it at scale. For you to compete and have a chance of unlocking a block, you have to have serious computing power, right? And that's what we're seeing here. Those big blocks are giant transactions all clumped into one block.
This is called the mempool. So right now, roughly every 10 minutes, there's a new block. Right now, we've got all of these transactions waiting in the mempool to be public.
When you're saying transaction, what is it?
When you buy something on Coinbase, that's a transaction. When you sell it on Coinbase, that's a transaction. When you send me some Bitcoin, that's a transaction.
So these are people in real world right now. Like this could be you right here. This could be you right here sending 0.2723967 Bitcoin. You could be sending that transaction to somebody. You could be sending you could be buying a car right now, 0.2723. That's worth $28,000 worth of Bitcoin is in this transaction, and you press a button on your phone and you send it. That goes into the mempool for the miners to see, so that when the next block is found, we're going to take your transaction and we're going to publish it to the whole world so everybody can look at it transparently. And that's the next block in the blockchain. Yes.
The general public is totally neophytes about this. Their concern is, where's the risk?
When you say where's the risk? The risk is
when you're buying these blocks, right? Where's the risk? Is there any risk? Is there anything that's happened that's been negative?
I mean,
that's out there in the street, public
yeah.
As to the fact that it's a Ponzi scheme, and there's the risk. So first of all, my question to you is: you're doing all this with your time pro bono, right?
Yeah.
You want to make this whole thing grow with everybody in this room, and there's WIIFM. What's in it for me? There isn't anything in it for you other than the development of.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying. Yeah, I mean, I was trying to.
Money to have the room and everything.
Yeah.
I'm curious how all this works.
And thank you to John, because I haven't had to pay for shit for the past 2 years since he joined helping me run the meetup. So really, I haven't had to pay much of anything aside from dinners at. Yeah.
I started in real estate in 1971.
Yeah.
And I was in it 50 years.
Yeah.
Thank God. It's very good to me. And I used to run these things.
Yeah.
But you all knew what was in it for me, obviously, as a broker.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of agents. So, I mean,
do you regret getting people involved with real estate?
Absolutely not.
There you go.
No, but
Real estate has been a fantastic investment. I spoke with Grant Cardone a couple days ago at the conference, and it's one of the oldest games in town.
Residually,
yeah.
I benefited from every one of their benefits.
Yeah.
And
beautiful.
That's where the question is for me, and you have to forgive me.
Yeah, no.
I figure you're doing this purely because you want to see Bitcoin go up as a group. There isn't anything monetarily benefiting you with anybody in this room buying Bitcoin other than the whole picture.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, you know, you.
I mean, I understand.
Yeah. So I have my main company is. I mean, I look around and know most of my friends, and they can't afford to buy homes, and they're like, "Why can't I afford to buy a home?" When my dad was my age, he could buy a home on 1 year of his salary. He was making $20,000 a year, but the house price was $18,000 or $22,000. Okay, well, you get my point, right? So, what was your annual salary at the time? Let me ask you a question. What was your annual salary at the time? What was your annual salary?
In 1971.
I
was pretty good shape. I was 18 to 20 grand a year.
So with 1 year of income, you could buy a house, right? You could, and your wife could stay home. She could have 3 kids. You could have a car and garage. The fucking American dream, right? Well, the average salary today is like 50 grand, and the average cost of a house is $500,000. So it's like, good luck. Good luck. But why is that? That's the question.
Part of their problem is it's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep. I mean, I would love to do an interview at.
Well, we can definitely do the interview, but listen to what you just said.
And find out why these kids had to spend $10 for their latte every day, and then tell me why they can't buy. I'm not saying that's the answer.
But hold on, let's
part of the problem.
For sure. But let's go back to the question I just asked you. You said the average cost of a home when you started was what?
The average cost of a home in Philadelphia, just a typical nice little row home, was probably in the neighborhood of, $14,000, $15,000.
And your annual salary was what?
My annual was I get paid because I was in the business.
Uh-huh.
But the annual salaries were about, right around 10 grand back.
Okay, so almost in 1 year's salary, you could buy a house, right?
That was your gross.
So the average salary today for somebody coming out of college is like 50 grand. You're getting paid 5 times as much money as 10 grand, but your purchasing power is 10 times less. So that's really what we're getting at here. And the reason for that is systemic.
The interest rates were higher than what they are now.
Correct, yeah.
But the housing affordability index, when it got down nice and low, people could buy homes. Some people could buy homes, but the equation has changed drastically. I found in my grandfather, like I was going through his stuff the other day, and I saw a fucking thing, and it was like a receipt for a car that he had bought, like a brand new car at the dealership, and it was like $1,200, $1,400. I said, Dad, what the fuck is this? What is this? He's like, oh, he bought a car. I'm like, what? I was like, what's the interest rate on the loan? What was the interest rate on the loan, Dad? Oh, you didn't do that back in the day. You just went and, you just bought a car. You didn't have to finance it for 12 years, 5, 6, 7 years. You just went and just paid cash and it was no big deal. Yeah. So again, that's the disconnect here. I hear what you're saying about those $10 lattes and all this stuff. Like, yes, that is a factor, but the overarching factor is that the price of money, the purchasing power, and that's a systemic issue that's slowly happening over time. And it's fundamentally, there's a crack at the foundation, right? Biggest objective is to get Bitcoin taught in the senior year of high school.
Fuck yeah. Yeah, but why would the government system that is, paid for by extraction just, but they're.
So, and this is a good way
Yeah.
for the world to change.
Exactly.
Correct.
And it's getting people like Matty and groups like this, like the first group that I came to before people. So, that the world is only going to change if people want it and then they believe in something.
Right.
And I think this is something that, like, my kids who are 21 and 25 are believing in this. I'm gonna tell you that it was my 25-year-old who kind of pushed us.
Yeah, I mean, this is like what this is like, this is not really an optional thing. This is like when gunfire was invented, when gunpowder was invented. It wasn't like, oh, I might adopt this, or I think this is, it's a Ponzi scheme. It's, you adopt this or you're going to get eroded by this. This is coming. This is happening. This is like the internet when it first came out, and you got people like Paul Krugman, who are the leading macroeconomics that they put on the TV. The internet is no more important than the fax machine, right? Like, those are the same people that are saying it's a Ponzi scheme. It's a hold on. How long do Ponzi schemes last for? That's another question. We're going on 20 years here.
I'm throwing this out there.
Yeah. No, it's a good question. It's a good question.
Understand it
Yes.
from a layman's standpoint.
No, perfect. And if I can get through to you, my message is working. What's the risk?
Hold on. What's the risk of Bitcoin? The discussions are a lot. Quantum computing.
Correct. That's a
risk. And centralization. Bob Burnett's been talking about it with this op return coming up. And
I'm probably on the other side of that debate to Bob.
That's a different debate. Yeah. But even after this last Bitcoin conference, if you go on X, there's a lot of these old Bitcoiners, the plebs, they're saying this is crazy. Wall Street's taken over. It's not decentralized anymore. So those are the risks.
So let me unpack all of those things. Okay. So hold on 1 second.
What if Mara buys all the miners? What if Mara's the only miner?
Now, control of the mining network, that is a risk.
There you go.
But not owning Bitcoin itself gives you no control over the system. You could sell your Bitcoin and have a price impact. That's really the biggest control you have. This is not how the status quo works. The status quo operates on what we call a proof of stake system, right? Proof of stake means that those who got the money make the rules. That's the proof of stake system, right? You got the capital, you can kind of control the things. Bitcoin doesn't operate that way. The miners, which are the proof of work, who are expending real world energy and costs, they are the ones who guide and steer the system along with the decentralized nodes of the system. Those are the people in control. This is called proof of work. It's very different. So just because whoever has a bunch of Bitcoin, that means nothing, right?
Who's in more control, the node or the miners?
They're a lot of times in combination. The nodes, the miners move forward the consensus of the chain. They move forward the next block of transactions, okay? The miners do that. The nodes decide, that is not going to end. The nodes decide what software implementation to run. It's like a vote.
The current debate is that Bitcoin Core said, we're going to lift the op return limit. They said, we're just going to lift it.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, you can't do that. You can't do that.
I think this is, in the grand scheme of things, this is largely noise.
Okay.
It's not really, it doesn't really matter.
It's noise, but
yeah.
This is
I think you're
This
sucked
is
into Bitcoin.
ridiculous.
You're sucked into Bitcoin Twitter, so you're seeing
Well,
like
I
a
am,
very
I am, but
your
sure,
algorithm
I'm
has
trying to see
steered
which
you
side-
into
I don't know which side it's
yeah,
right. I don't
yeah.
know.
So
But I'm seeing
on a
exactly-
very high level basis, I can try to break it down to you, right? This is a block. In order to put your information in a block to do a transaction, there's a real world cost to that, right? You have to pay essentially the miners to publish your block, and it takes up space in this blockchain. Because remember, a blockchain is a bunch of blocks that is like a history. Ever since inception, all the transactions forever are in that one block, right? So whoever runs a node has to store all of that information since inception, right? The Bitcoin blockchain is like minuscule. When it comes to storing all this data, there's only a block once every 10 minutes. There's only 1 megabyte per block. Moore's law and technology today, to run a node, it's so easy. You know, you run a node, beautiful, right? So like I'm running my node right now with my hard drive that I had from like 8 years ago. I haven't had to upgrade it a single time. I don't think the argument about opportunities it even matters, because the technology 5 years from now are going to be so easy. They're going to be having 5 terabyte hard drives, just like we started with little sticks of like 12 megabytes. Now we're running 5 terabyte. I've got some hard drives that are like, you know, in some of my machines that are like 30 terabytes. I don't think this is a real problem. And I will also say the argument that goes around it is that some transactions are spam. Well, in my mind, if you're paying to have whatever you want put in that block, you're paying for it. It's not spam. So even if it's something ridiculous, you're paying a real cost to be recorded in this block for all of humanity.
Miners make more money.
What's up?
They take the block with the spam, they make more money.
That's the point. I mean, that's called capitalism. That's how the system works. That's how it was designed by Satoshi. A lot of people don't understand that the very first block that was ever published, Satoshi put non-monetary information in that block. He put a picture of the 2008 chancellor on the brink of banks on the brink of bailout. So Satoshi himself designed this and set this up.
But those are the threats. In other words, he says,
Yeah. Personally, I don't find that a threat. I think that's just how the system's operating, how it was designed, and it's not even a real problem. I think they could probably increase, if they wanted to, they could increase the block size to 4 megabytes, no problem. They could quadruple the size of the block. That's my opinion. But, you know, leaving it alone is also fine. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything about how the system operates. It's beautiful. It works as money, as digital gold.
Quick about the quantum.
Quantum is a real threat. We're looking at, but that being said, right?
There's years to solve
it. There's a very simple fix. We just upgrade the cryptography. You make essentially the TLDR is we make the passwords longer.
Exactly.
That's it. You know, that's really what it comes down to. There's already the core devs have already proposed that update. And if the nodes see it as a threat, if people that have Bitcoin see it as a threat, the whole community will simply upgrade to that new version of core. Yes.
I want to go back a little bit.
Okay.
To the risk question, I think is very important. I think the biggest risk right now for me is that people are confusing crypto with Bitcoin. So, you know, Bitcoin is so unique in everything that you've seen there when we're talking is about Bitcoin. When you double up all the cryptos, there are more than 100,000 out there, then you are in a big risk because all of them, the majority, more than 85%, are scams. So if you stick to Bitcoin, you are literally almost free of risk.
That's why I'm here. I guess my only other question with these computer eggheads, is there any chance that they can break into that thing and maybe extract some of the money out of that?
No, you're actually compensated very well for operating in good faith publicly with the internet. You're all connected. Every single node in the world is like connected, and you're seeing this is like an Excel spreadsheet that everybody's updating in real time. Think about it like a poker table, right? You're at a poker table you got 9 people at a poker table. If somebody just reaches into the pot and tries to steal money, what's going to happen to the other 8 people at the poker table? They're going to say, "What the hell are you doing? What's your name?"
I understand that, but you know how competitive money doesn't change people; it reveals them.
Yeah.
You find out what people are all about when money's involved.
Yeah.
And especially these computer people that are just brilliant.
Yeah.
And I'm only saying that I'm curious if there is any concern about the possibility of somebody penetrating that.
So if there was,
and just being a little bit.
we're talking about $1 trillion of value here. If there was, it would have already been done and it would have already been exploited. Yeah. No,
They can't do it. It costs them too much money to hack in. They have to have.
So the way the system is designed is it operates by consensus. So you need 51% of all the mining hash power to try to change a transaction in a block. So think about the amount of machines and gigawatts of energy that's currently supporting the system. You would have to control over 50% of that for an extended period of time, and you'd only be able to change transactions in one block that's up and coming. That's all you could really do. But to basically what I'm getting at is technically it's impossible, but realistically it's completely impossible. It's like saying you can control half of all this energy in hundreds of countries all over the world at the same time. Yeah.
You could be worried about the
Yeah.
FDIC also.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
the geniuses can probably break it, but they don't have the money. Not even a government.
No, you're not understanding what I'm like. The code is what we call open source, meaning that anybody can view all of the code at any given time, right? And this it has been working as designed, transparently, flawlessly for almost 2 decades now. The best hackers and people in the world have attempted to look at this system and try to find exploits that said that, you know, what Satoshi did could not be done. They laughed and said we can. They literally had to write notes that say, "Wow, this was one of the best design systems ever. It's impossible to penetrate. It's been, you know, well documented." This is, if you do your research on it, it's been well documented.
Now, this gentleman, the guy that would know that was an attempt.
Who would know that was an attempt?
Satoshi or the fellow that-
So Peter Thiel, Satoshi is the person who the pseudonym of the person who designed this system.
He would know that somebody was trying to penetrate.
Oh, of course, he had to design. He spent years designing the system to make sure that that was impossible. You know,
So
that was.
What he's saying is right now, in order to change anything on the Bitcoin blockchain, you would need 51% of the hash power, which this Bitcoin is the biggest globally decentralized computing network ever in existence, right? So to have 51% of that network would cost trillions of dollars in just a second.
Okay,
right?
you're
So
answering
it is-
a question that I understand what he's asking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the whole concept that I'm still having a hard time of
Uh-huh.
understanding the blockchain and the Bitcoin. People can come and steal your Bitcoin.
Correct.
You
Yeah.
can hack into your Coinbase account and all of
Yeah.
that. But that transaction of me buying my one Bitcoin 10 years ago is written on one of those blocks somewhere. Nobody would ever really be able to get that and say, that $1,000 of Bitcoin that I bought 10 years ago, I'm going to reassign to her.
Yeah.
That can't be done.
Let me put it to you this way:
But-
the system itself, for 20 years, almost 20 years now, has never had a single attack, downtime, any problem, any issue, and it's been growing and operating on an exponential path of adoption and use over that time period. Now, the people are the attack vectors. If you tell me your password, I can steal all your Bitcoin, right? That's the risk, right? If you take self-custody of your coin, right? If you buy MicroStrategy stock or have an ETF in your Schwab portfolio or whatever, no, you're not subject to that same risk. You're going to benefit from the price appreciation, but you're trusting a centralized third party to basically do that for you in a lot of ways.
This is your full-time life?
Correct. This is my full-time life, yeah.
I figured it would be.
Yeah.
Especially if you've been in it all.
24/7.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
At the risk of being thrown out of the room, I ask you something. I know
Yes.
this is mostly here.
Yeah.
Bitcoin likes this, so I can't, you know.
Ask whatever you want.
Bitcoin
It's a Bitcoin and blockchain meetup.
Bitcoin
So.
is great, and it's going to do great.
Yeah.
And it's only 21 million, who knows, maybe some are lost on the way, it's
Uh-huh.
going to be 19 million. Okay? But if you can tell somebody, you know what, hard to tell somebody it's 100,000, invest yourself.
But you can buy a fraction of a Bitcoin. You have to buy a full
Understand.
Bitcoin. Yeah.
But if you want to tell somebody, you know, because I like to find companies that nobody
Yeah.
ever found, okay? In 1984, when I started investing in the stock market, I found one company, and if you maybe you remember, it was Symbol Technology. And everybody was laughing. What you need is barcoding, okay? And I invested, it was $4. Eventually it was taken over by Zebra Technologies. They're still using those handheld scanners, right? So now, if you're gonna tell somebody, let's find something that is undiscovered yet. I mean, Bitcoin did great, okay? 10 years ago, Bitcoin was $500, right? Okay, Vitalik Buterin, with a couple of Bitcoiners, invented Ethereum.
Yeah.
Okay, and Bitcoin was $500. Now it's 100,000. That's 200x. Ethereum, in the meantime, from 35 cents went to 2,600. That's 7,000x. Why can't you tell people, let's find something that nobody discovered yet? What would you
Why can't I
recommend?
tell people that? I mean, people can do whatever they want with their
I
money.
understand.
I can only speak from where I have confidence from, and what I believe in. And if anybody's known me for the past 7 years, I've told you, and my advice to you has been like, invest in these 3 assets, dollar cost average, get a foundational position in these. These are like the blue chips of the industry, kind of filter through the noise. Yes, there are things you can get rich quick doing. You can get lucky. They can pump all that stuff. I filter all of that out, really. Do I gamble with some of my own money? Of course. But I also have a massive position in these assets. This is what I recommend.
What's the other one?
What do you mean the other one? Solana would probably be the only other blockchain I've recommended.
Remember last year I was here about this time?
Uh-huh.
I mentioned Algorand, 8 cents.
Uh-huh.
People were laughing at me. Now it's 20 cents, went to 60 cents.
Yeah. I mean,
I was afraid to mention XRP at 60 cents.
Yeah.
Because it was a lawsuit and election was coming. Who knows what's going to happen, But XRP is not $2.
What are your other hot picks then?
Let me ask you something. Isn't it a bad idea? That's my theory, okay? XRP is $2. What happens if they're going to replace, they're going to get the ETFs and they're going to replace, the European system or whatever. And if it's going to go,
I own all these assets personally. I think the
But
use
I'm
cases.
mentioning
Yeah.
to the people over here. Now, let's say XRP is going to run from 2 to 20, 10x. Maybe I can get Bitcoin equivalent to 10,000.
Maybe you can what?
That's what the whole.
This is what a free market is. I mean, people can do whatever they want. I mean,
I'm giving you ideas.
Yeah.
I'm giving you ideas.
I think most people in here who are not, traders should dollar cost average. I've taught this many times, and just pick a couple solid assets. And if you want to gamble, go gamble. I'm not going to advise on that. I'm going to advise on the networks and systems that I fundamentally believe in. Right, like the value proposition. Fundamentally, why does this matter? Yes.
I see a phenomenal, great opportunity, just like what I've been through 50 years as a broker. With your background, if I was going to invest my money, why wouldn't I do it through you? And let you get these conversations.
Well, you're not the first person who's asked, because John's laughing because there's a couple people that want to start a fund, but yeah.
I can tell you what.
You want to give me a broker for Bitcoin.
Oh, I'm saying.
So we do. So I will say this: we do. My main company has been our own funds, but we've grown large. That we do have another. We've done that. I funded the media side of our business, which you're watching the podcast and some of that stuff right now. Paul's producing and building that. That's a source of income. John was hired in the past year because I had somebody coming to give me $1 million check, and John happened to be in the office, and I'm like, I don't want to take the money. But now John is the head of our curated mining division. So we are doing, for accredited investors, because legally that's the law, we are doing essentially what I'm doing at scale anyway with my own capital, which is just mining operations to support the Bitcoin blockchain. So we do have that aspect of our curated business where we just take a minority equity position. No, we're not charging any fees, no nothing. We're a partner in the enterprise. And if it makes money, you do well and we do well. If it doesn't, we make nothing.
You're the capacity as a fiduciary.
Essentially, yeah. I'm a partner. I'm a sweat equity partner. I manage everything, and people don't have the expertise. I have the expertise after a decade. So
That's my whole point.
But for money you're talking about, you might want to buy from strategy initially. Strategy, like Michael said, wants to become a bank.
Yeah.
It sounds like you want to buy from a bank more than buy from a Coinbase or an exchange.
I think he's just learning. He's asking questions. And,
Yeah.
They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but I disagree. We've taught a lot of grandmas in here how to self-custody and do all sorts of stuff. Ask Diane. No, Ronnie's.
How old are you? 85. Well, I'm 81.
What's up?
What's the one thing you can give us information, but we have to do our own study.
Exactly, yeah.
What do you
have
do
a
all
blessing
day?
in time like this.
Well, what I'm saying is, what do you have to do all day long?
They go.
No,
Okay.
I happen to enjoy all
Do
my
you,
money.
what do you have? Do you have an hour or two a day to study this?
Yeah.
So you could be doing.
Well, it's learning. It takes a lot of time. I mean,
Sure, it takes.
but you got to, yeah, you got to learn.
Time
So,
to learn real estate.
yeah, of course.
I know, I pay my dues.
Proof of work it translates to other areas of life.
Yeah, we spend 10 to 20 hours.
You get a good idea for sure.
So I just don't, what these guys are doing here, they're spreading the word.
Yeah.
To people like us, so that I can spread the word to my friends and family.
Yeah.
And we're gonna cause hyper-Bitcoinization one day, where everybody's gonna be walking around, everybody's got one of these right now. I guarantee everybody's got one. He's saying you're gonna have a Lightning wallet on here or some other wallet. Instead of transacting in cash, you're gonna be transacting in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be the best money out there, because everybody's gonna trust the Bitcoin. And
I genuinely enjoy educating and teaching and talking about monetary history and game theory and computer science.
Bitcoin's open 24/7. Where your bank is open 9 to 5. Monday through Friday. If you're lucky, and it's closed on Monday and holidays. It's
So-
closed on Memorial Day, it's closed on 4th of July. Bitcoin's open 24/7.
My background is taken up. Bitcoin wanted to compare my case.
Right.
I think that's a great point, because the fact that we're in a place in the history of Bitcoin that you might get lucky and you might earn, or you might capitalize on its asymmetric growth at this point in time is just a bonus. Because the real thing about Bitcoin is that it's going to help change the entire world, help change the way that the world functions from the standpoint of money. And money is at the center of everything. You know, money defines all the decisions that we make are based on money. And
So there was a period in Europe where there was no wars for 100 years. Right? There was a 100-year period of peace, and through Matty and Dominic Frisbee's book series, we found it was because they were on a gold standard. They couldn't finance war. That's why there was peace for 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly, the bankers said, "Hey, the Rothschild said, hey, we'll lend you some money," and then back come the wars, right? So essentially what our generation wants, we want for our kids, right? We're young dads now, right? We want for them to live in a world where they can have all the benefits of innovation, of prosperity, of the American dream, right? But on a sound money standard, where we're not involving ourselves in conflicts. Essentially we want to incentivize to right the best attributes of humanity, and I think that Bitcoin is the first money of its kind that actually has a moral element to it, right? And hopefully that will usher in a future that is worth living for.
In fact, it has morality.
I don't-
Problem, you're gonna have a rough time in Washington. They don't have morality.
I don't know about you people. I don't know about you people, but I don't want to live in a world where someone else makes the world a better place than we do. That's a Silicon Valley quote.
Individual sovereignty, the young person that's right in front of me, that the Bitcoin offers is nothing like.
Yeah.
And if you worry about political things, and you look at people who suffer under really harsh governments, if they have to ask nicely, would you please fund my trip to the Ukraine or something like this, it'll make a better world for these younger people. And anybody who's alive and who's been alive since 71 is going to rock.
Yeah. So I mean, let me break it down. I mean, I feel this is a area that I'm passionate about, where I can make an impact on the world. And I think that if you really do start to study history and look at things through a monetary lens and a tax lens and kind of look at all this stuff, a lot of stuff that's happened really should have never happened in a lot of ways, right? If you look at how World War I started and how we got involved and how the Fed was kind of established and how money was sort of printed to close the gaps in a lot of ways with World War II and how Hitler came to power, if you kind of like look at all this stuff through a monetary lens, how are these wars being funded? Well, I'm telling you, it's not from people giving the money on the front end. It's from the government printing money and devaluing people's purchasing power on the back end, right? So Bitcoin prevents that in a lot of ways. So to me, it's like this peaceful revolution, this peaceful opt-out. Not a lot of people also know that. You've grown up in the Western world and Western civilization, and had access to banks and different things that work pretty well. Kind of works, unless you step out of line like the Canadian truckers did, and their bank accounts got wiped from existence, and you turned into a terrorist, right? Then you kind of realize, well, shit, maybe this isn't the way to do things. Maybe I should have some wealth that nobody can take from me with a couple clicks of a button if I step out of line in the government. If Justin, little Fidelito, as they called him, little Fidel Castro, little blackface Fidelito. I can't remember his exact name, what they were calling him, but like you step out of line a little bit, you never might know what happened to you, right? So But that all being said, half of the people on this planet don't have access to bank accounts. They don't have access to a stable government. They don't have access to non-hyperinflating currencies. They don't have access to basic infrastructure, right? Billions of people on this planet today live in a situation where they don't even have ID. They can't get a bank account. They can't pass KYC, AML, 50,000 different regulations and things that the government keeps growing and growing and growing and making these, bureaucratic jobs doing all these different things and laws and regulations and fines. And you got to go through this committee to get to this committee to go to this committee. I mean, like in a true sound money society, these things don't exist. This fiat grift, I guess.
One of the great things for marketing this would be to see if you could get this, to get the colleges, which of course I really struggle with, to have this as a major.
Yeah, that's going to be,
They teach it in El Salvador.
yeah, they're starting to do that in El Salvador. Yeah. So, there's a famous quote that goes something along the likes of, it's very hard to get people to understand something when their income depends on them not understanding it. I can't remember who said that quote, but that's what you've got in a lot of these academia colleges where you've got these tenured professors that are literal communists that have never actually had to work a real day in their life. Yes.
So what you're talking about is a great book about this, Check Your Financial Freedom.
Alex Gladstein. He's fantastic. I love him.
Talking about how people around the world fighting with this unbanking and the Bitcoin saving them.
Yeah.
But when I talk to younger people, I tell them, look, whenever you make money, whenever you have some saving, put it in the crypto. Bitcoin or any other crypto that you think is going to do good, especially the ones that they have ISO 20,022, which I like some of them. And just put it away and don't keep it in dollars because eventually you're going to lose everything with inflation. So that's what they used to do in a communist country. Whoever had some savings, they used to buy dollars, British pounds, Swiss francs, nothing in currency because it was what the inflation was killing them. Okay?
Yeah, I think it's important to just understand that there is a difference between Bitcoin and everything else. Some of the other cryptocurrency projects that are leveraging technology are going to succeed, and many of them are going to fail. Many of them are scams. That being said, there are legitimate other projects, but just like the internet, just like the early internet, right? You saw these companies, these internet companies come up. You've got the Amazons and these other big, the Facebooks, the Googles, whatever. But then you've got a lot of pets.coms and failed things. But understand that Bitcoin is something fundamentally different. It's literally hard money itself.
So you're using this for your net worth. Are you living on it also?
Will you say that one more time?
Are you living on it also?
Yes, like I said, you can do. There's many different ways you can make that happen.
So you're building your net worth, and you're also.
Yeah.
That's how you exist.
I think about my net worth in Bitcoin terms. I guess is the the way to think about it, right? But what are you going to do?
So we got about 10 minutes left. 10 minutes
Wow.
left. Anybody?
Wow.
This has been a great conversation.
Yeah.
Really has.
So, you said you run a node, right?
Yes.
So that's a fascinating next step to take on this journey. So you can participate in the Bitcoin blockchain and run your own node, right? Most people don't know what that is, but that is literally just a device the size of your phone that has a little CPU chip, a little what kind of a miner is it?
I got to start 9.
Alessandro, you're building these things, right? Yeah. So there's BitX and Solo.
But a BitX,
or for like $150, you can buy a little solo miner. They're called, right? And you can now mine Bitcoin.
That's different than a node, though. Just want to be aware.
It's
a node and a miner are different, so it's not.
So when you run a node, what's the qualification for that? Does it have a certain hash power? Or
No, hash power is for a miner. A node is you're just keeping a copy of the blockchain of all these blocks. You're keeping a history of this. Yes, you are running a history of the Bitcoin blockchain since inception. That's called a node. To verify.
$600 for a start 9.
Interesting. So you're not mining.
But you can no.
It looks like you're.
So what's the incentive?
So it doesn't make money.
So what's the incentive to
The incentive to run a node is if you're transacting on Bitcoin, you can verify your own transactions to make sure you're not trusting anybody else. You're actually connecting to your node and saying, okay, is this transaction real? Can I trust this? And but what I'm trying to explain is the cost to run a node is like negligible. It's nothing. You can use an old computer from 20 years ago and run it and still pretty much run the whole node. I mean, you're only storing a 1 megabyte of data every 10 minutes, which is incredibly small, right? All of this is just transactions.
We got on your laptop, so you just downloaded the Start9 software for free then, right?
Yeah, download the Start9 software. You got a username and password. or you just got a big password.
Yeah.
I made a password, and then, I just
Look at
punch it in, and
downloads.
it runs. So if the whole Bitcoin network went down around the world, I could have the only last copy. That's the point of the nodes, right?
It's exactly
That's the point.
And tell us about the tiny miner.
The BitX.
The BitX is a tiny miner. It can basically sit on top of your desk, and it mines for Bitcoin. And so, if you are extremely lucky,
It's like playing the lottery.
It's like playing
Like
the
playing the
lottery.
lottery.
The odds that you win a block is extremely small. I think it's like 1 in 8 million.
They got them all over us, so.
But it's fun to have something on your desk that makes no noise and reminds you that you're mining away and contributing to the decentralization of Bitcoin.
Right.
Yeah, true.
That's right.
It's exactly right.
So we're gonna partner with Solar Satoshi, and we're gonna start giving one away every meetup going forward. So
I think the nodes are more important, but the lottery tickets are cool too.
Well, yeah, they're just fun. It's a novelty thing. Every day you have a chance
Good
to
learning
unlock a block.
experience.
Yeah.
Right. It's good for kids. $150, right? My kid's gonna buy one with his Bitcoin, but there's ways to contribute, even a small scale, right? No technological, like you don't have to have any previous experience. You just essentially watch a YouTube video and off you go. You are now a participant, right? You're not just observing. And that's the idea. It's like you want people to get involved. There is no barrier to entry here. You just need internet connection, essentially. And if that were to go down on one side of the planet, right? We got people like him,
That's right.
facilitating the blockchain elsewhere, right? So there's always going to be a copy somewhere. But is there any other questions, right? You come here, hopefully you got whatever questions you had answered. Matty is a wealth of knowledge. Once you get him going, it's going to be hard to get him to stop. So take your chance before the time is up. If there's any other questions you have, we've got some awesome guests coming in the next couple of months. You're going to be spoiled. Is Knut going to speak? Is he going to make that?
I don't think he'll be here during a meetup.
Okay. We have a Norwegian Bitcoiner coming by next week. Swedish. In Bitcoin Infinity. He runs that channel. You've probably seen it. It's a pretty good one. But take it away, guys. Ask any question. There's no such thing as a bad Bitcoin question.
Where's the QR code linked to?
Which QR code are you talking about? Right here?
Put the Discord QR up there.
Yeah.
That's just
Go
a
to our
chat group
Discord
where if you have any questions, right? If you want to speculate on other coins,
That's
don't do so unless you ask in the group, right? You have a community where you can ask questions, where you can share insights. You're not alone in this. And don't go sending anybody any money, any Bitcoin online, right? There's a bunch of fraudsters, a bunch of scammers, right? If you're ever about to, ask us first, right?
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
About Trump's stack paddle.
Yeah.
Those 3 or 4 coins that he, what is that all about? That's something we should buy, you just asked.
Oh, Trump's coins?
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
I was not.
if you like to speculate, right?
Strategic reserve point?
No, the actual ticker Trump coins, they're meme coins.
Yeah, I would mostly stay away from that.
The stockpile. She's talking about the
I'm
strategic
talking about
reserve coins.
Ethereum and.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So
He put those.
going forward, Bitcoin ownership, like I said, this is like gunpowder. You either adopt it or you kind of get consumed here. You're going to lose purchasing power in real terms, right? So counties will own Bitcoin. Businesses will own Bitcoin. Look at MicroStrategy and Sailor companies. Look at states. You're seeing state strategic reserve bills. Nation states will own Bitcoin, right? A nation state that's going to project power and influence in the next century is going to have Bitcoin. It's going to have a Bitcoin strategic reserve because Bitcoin is the soundest money to ever exist in all of human history. And that's just a fact, right? So nation states will own Bitcoin.
What about the stockpile?
When you say stockpile, I don't know what you mean.
XRP, right?
Oh, you're talking about not the Bitcoin strategic reserve. So those are, I don't know too much about that, but that's ownership of, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that maybe if they have police actions or they seize like they do with other things, we have stockpiles of all sorts of things. We have a cheese stockpile. We have what's up?
Well,
I mean, it does signify to the world that we're going to be a leader at the forefront of technology and innovation. The government is getting involved in, technology and Web3 and different things, right? So.
Well, it's either because
I don't know.
we have some seized as from criminals.
Yeah.
Criminal activity. or it's because of that.
They're made in the USA, yeah. Technologies that are made. That's probably your answer. Trump's a big USA guy, so probably that.
But those are all valid, well-established crypto projects.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when he first had that whole crypto group together, they were like, you're probably hitting it on the head. These are made in the USA. These are, USA-based companies. We're going to choose these cryptos because they're well-established and they're made in the USA. So, I mean, if you're gambling, look, if you're
Before buying anything else, understand and focus on Bitcoin, and then you can kind of worry about some of these other things.
If you're gambling, you want to gamble on those are good bets.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
Is there for some of the people, or everybody, but is there like a resource for Bitcoin education, like a series of videos? Do you know any?
There's a lot of good stuff. So there was, I don't know if it's still up, but Peter McCormick, when he was doing the What Bitcoin Did podcast, had a great 12-episode series on Bitcoin.
What do you think about hope.com?
There was someone else did one on, had a series on
Hope.com, I don't know.
That's MicroStrategies.
MicroStrategy probably has a good one. I haven't watched it, but
Try hope.com.
this is my favorite intro series that I always recommended to people. Was this series? See, it's not even. I don't even know if it's here anymore. But you could probably look it up if you actually type it in. It was the Beginner's Guide to Bitcoin, and it had about 12 different Bitcoiners, 12 episodes, and there's some really good. You want to spend 20 hours really kind of understanding from different things. That was a good series. You might have to search it. There's all sorts of stuff. Yeah. If you do the research, you will find it. There's, stuff out there. Bitcoin Standard by Saifedean is a fantastic book. Yes. How about hijacking Bitcoin?
All right, so let's get Matty in.
All right.
Feel free to mingle around a little bit. Ask him individual questions if you want.
Yeah. This is my little brother.
This is Junior.
This is my little brother.
Daddy, you set him up for the questions over here. Like they asked me this question. Hey Matty, check this out.
What's going on? This is your Ellie pal?
Ellie pal. And you know what? They just coming out with a card. They delayed. Was supposed to be end of May. They just sent me email. It's gonna be card, but flash me from.
Okay.
But I'm doing exchanges over here.
I gotta see what you're doing. Yeah. Show me.
But this is you don't connect to computer. Go through the QR code. Look.
Oh, you see. You gotta be careful. Hey.
What's going on? It's okay. Load it, Bill. Okay, so here, and if I want to sell something, just sign QR code to my phone, QR code to the wallet here, QR code from the wallet here, and it's transferred, and it's authorized.
Where are you selling at?
Whatever.
What exchange are they using? Let me see. What are they doing?
I don't know.
Go press swap. See what's happening.
Oh, swap? Yeah, they're going to ask what I want to swap. They're asking me, I want to swap XRP to what?
Okay.
And then I have to authorize, and that's it.
This is your phone. Just say you do one XRP.
XRP to what?
15. I want to know. So what if you press swap? What happens?
Well, it's going to ask me to authorize.
Let me go to your profile.
Don't.
Profile.
But you don't connect to computer. Nothing. Everything is with QR codes, both ways, and goes right away.
I want to know what
cheap,
exchange they're using to do it. Yeah. Okay. I have to look at it.
Read about it.
Did you ever have to do KYC of any form to do this?
Yes, but not as complicated as conflicts.
So if you had to do KYC, whatever
security and
so whatever,
tribalized.
so they're reporting on you somewhere. So if you gave them your social security driver license, you're using an exchange in the back end. You don't know which one.
How do you know?
Because you gave them.
How much I paid?
It doesn't matter. Every time you transact, they're recording a gain or a loss. So they are.
If I transfer Ethereum from MetaMask,
They don't care. They're reporting every swap you do as a taxable transaction.
This is new. I don't know what's going to
So if you gave them your social security number, they're sending a form somewhere. So if you make gains and sell, they're sending a tax form somewhere. So just be aware of that.
You know what I'm doing a lot? I told you last time. I trust capital.
Huh?
I trust capital. Roth IRA and IRA. Right? And you know why it's great?
Yeah, if you're doing it in an IRA, you're good.
Roth IRA and IRA. And you know what? When I'm going to have to get minimum distribution, I trust capital. I can tell them I want in-kind distribution.
Yeah.
I'm sending my details to my self-custody wallet.
Beautiful. I love it. Love it.
Matty, take care.
Tom,
Logo, yes. This is someone nice, this whole thing.
Oh, perfect.
I got ledger stuff.
You got your ledger?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So, can I make an appointment with you to see that?
Where's John?
Yeah, that's where
We're going to the.
John.
Do you have your laptop with you or no?
I don't have a laptop.
You don't have any laptop at all?
My house.
Okay. Bring it to my office. Talk to John. He can help you. He'll set it up. He's
He
my.
said ask you first.
Oh, he's
He's gonna be
okay.
able to.
I give him. Give him. Say it's okay. I give
Do
permission.
I get to stand in the party line?
What's going on?
I'm in trouble.
What are you in trouble? What happened?
I can't get anything out of my coin desk.
Okay.
They don't let me buy or let me sell.
Yeah, they've got a lock on you. You're gonna have to go through the support process. Try to figure it out.